All right, buckle up, everybody, because today we are diving headfirst into a story that's, well, it's both bizarre and kind of tragic, you know?
Definitely one of those stories that really sticks with you.
Yeah, and we're talking about Heaven's Gate,
Hmm.
the cult that, well, that committed mass suicide back in '97.
Right when the internet was just starting to take off.
Exactly. And that's what makes this whole thing so fascinating and honestly kind of creepy. You've got this group obsessed with UFOs and aliens.
He's leaving their earthly bodies behind,
Right. But they're also using the internet, building websites, and trying to recruit people online.
which is kind of ahead of the curve for the time.
Totally. So we're going to be digging into all of that, trying to understand what led them to that final tragic act. And we've got some pretty amazing source material.
Oh, yeah.
News reports from back then, early research papers, even some snippets from their website, which, believe it or not, was actually pretty advanced for its time.
You'd be surprised how tech savvy they were.
So yeah, let's get this deep dive started and see if we can make sense of it all.
It's a wild ride, that's for sure.
I think one of the things that struck me right away was just how the media immediately jumped on this whole internet angle.
Oh, totally.
I mean, picture it. 39 bodies found in a mansion in Rancho Santa Fe, California.
All wearing matching tracksuits and those Nike sneakers.
Yeah, the whole thing was just so eerie. And of course, everyone's trying to figure out why, what could possibly drive people to this. And the internet, this new, untamed frontier, became the instant scapegoat.
It was the perfect boogeyman for the media.
Exactly. It was this, the internet is turning our kids into cultists. Kind of panic.
And it fed into this pre-existing fear of technology, especially among older generations who didn't really understand it.
Right. It was like this digital Wild West full of dangers lurking around every corner. But I mean, come on, was the internet really to blame?
Well, it definitely played a role in their story, but not in the way that the media was portraying it. I mean, the internet didn't brainwash these people.
Yeah, they had their beliefs long before they ever logged on. So
Yeah.
let's try to untangle this a bit. Who exactly were these people? What did they believe?
All right, so Heaven's Gate was founded back in the early 70s by two, shall we say, rather charismatic figures. Marshall Applewhite, who went by the name Dew,
Oh, gotta love those cult leader nicknames.
and Bonnie Nettles, known as Ty.
Ty and Do, okay.
And their whole belief system was this really strange blend of science fiction, biblical prophecy, and New Age spirituality.
So kind of a grab bag of all the weirdest stuff out there.
You could say that. They believed that they were extraterrestrial beings inhabiting human bodies.
Wait, so they thought they were aliens?
Yeah, and they were just waiting for the call to return to what they called the next level, or the evolutionary level above human, as they sometimes put it.
Right, so it was all about transcending this earthly existence, leaving their bodies behind and becoming pure energy or something.
You got it. And it's important to remember this was the era of Roswell, Area 51.
Oh yeah, the UFO craze was in full swing back then.
Exactly. So their ideas, while definitely out there, weren't completely unheard of at the time. There was this whole cultural fascination with the unknown, with extraterrestrial life.
Right, and they tapped into that existing fear and wonder. But how do they go from just believing in aliens to actually convincing people to,
Leave their bodies behind.
Mhm.
Well, that's where things start to get really complicated and, frankly, kind of disturbing. You see, for Heaven's Gate, it wasn't about death.
Go ahead.
It was about graduation, a shedding of their flawed containers to achieve a higher evolutionary state, emerging, as they believed, with pure cosmic consciousness.
Right, so they weren't suicidal in the traditional sense. They thought they were, what, evolving into a higher being.
Yeah, like they were shedding their skin, their human shell, to become something more.
Still, it's a pretty big leap to convince people to actually go through with it. There must have been something that triggered this, some kind of sign, right?
Well, there was. And it came in the form of a comet, the Hale-Bopp comet, to be exact.
Ugh, Hale-Bopp, I remember that. It was all over the news back then.
Oh, yeah, it was a huge deal. And in 1996, an amateur astronomer reported seeing a mysterious object trailing Hale-Bopp.
Whoa, like a UFO.
That's what a lot of people thought.
So I can only imagine how the Heaven's Gate folks reacted to this.
Well, let's just say they took it as a sign, a confirmation of their beliefs.
It's like all of a sudden their spaceship had arrived.
That's exactly how they saw it. This companion vehicle, as they called it, wasn't just an object. It was their ticket to the evolutionary level above human, the escape route they had been waiting for.
Wow. Okay, so we've got the comet, we've got this whole belief system about transcendence and leaving their bodies behind. But what about their website? How does that fit into all of this?
That's where things get really interesting. Because, you see, their website was, in many ways, a reflection of their ideology, their desire for control, and their ultimate rejection of the world.
All right, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this website.
Well, for starters, it was actually pretty sophisticated for its time. They were using HTML in really unusual ways, stuffing the meta tags, the ones normally used for search engines, with all these hidden messages and repeated phrases.
Ah, interesting. So it wasn't just about sharing information. It was about trying to control the narrative.
Exactly. They were trying to create this aura of mystery and intrigue.
But it also backfired, right? I mean, you mentioned earlier that their website was ridiculed for its design.
Oh, yeah, big time. People thought it was clunky, out of touch with the emerging norms of internet culture.
So instead of coming across as cutting edge, they ended up looking like, well, a bunch of weirdos.
Pretty much. And I think that's part of the tragedy of Heaven's Gate. They were so focused on escaping this world, on transcendence, that they missed the basic rules of engagement, even in the digital world they so desperately wanted to be a part of.
So it's like they were trapped in their own little bubble, even online.
Exactly. And that isolation, that inability to truly connect with others, probably played a role in their radicalization.
Makes you wonder how different things might have been if they'd actually found a community online, a place where they felt seen and understood.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thought. Maybe they wouldn't have felt the need to escape so desperately if they'd had that connection, that sense of belonging in the digital world.
It's like they were searching for something, but they were looking in all the wrong places.
And sadly, that search ultimately led them down a path of self-destruction.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about their beliefs, the role of the comet, and how their website was both a reflection of their ideology and a source of their isolation.
Right, but we're just scratching the surface here.
Oh, I know. There's still so much more to unpack.
There is.
Like, how did their internal dynamics work? What was life like inside the group?
And how did they go from this relatively small fringe group to committing such a shocking and public act?
Yeah, there are a lot of questions still swirling around Heaven's Gate.
And hopefully we can start to answer some of them in our next deep dive.
All right, well, I'm definitely ready for more. Let's see what other secrets we can unearth in this digital dig. It's easy to just write Heaven's Gate off as like a bunch of crazy people.
Mm-hmm.
But the deeper we go,
Mm-hmm.
the more I kind of see these glimpses of like really human desires.
Totally.
Like that need for connection, that yearning for meaning, wanting to escape suffering.
Absolutely. And those desires, they can be amplified online, especially when you mix in that potent cocktail of alienation and apocalypse anxiety, kind of like what we saw in the 90s.
Right, like Y2K, the whole end of the world as we know it vibe.
Exactly. People were genuinely freaking out about computers going haywire and society collapsing.
Yeah, like those cheesy disaster movies where everything goes dark.
Exactly. At Heaven's Gate, they swooped in and offered this, well, seemingly concrete solution, a way to just like transcend all that chaos, all that uncertainty of the physical world.
Right, but their solution involved, giving up basically everything that makes us human.
Mm-hmm.
Individuality, relationships, even our bodies.
Right, which brings us back to that whole cyborg thing we touched on earlier.
Yeah, that whole idea of like shedding your flesh for a more evolved existence.
Exactly, and it's where their website and their bizarre use of technology gets really interesting. Remember how obsessed they were with control, with manipulating the digital landscape to fit their narrative? But at the same time, they were so deeply alienated, even within that online world they were trying to escape into.
It's like they were stuck in this weird in-between zone.
Totally. Caught between reality and fantasy, unable to fully inhabit either realm.
And that disconnect, that inability to reconcile their beliefs with the real world, that's ultimately what led to their tragic end, right?
Precisely. But there's another layer here that I think is particularly relevant, especially for you as someone exploring the evolution of the internet. It's this whole question of identity and how it plays out in online spaces.
Okay, break that down for me.
All right, so the internet, from the very beginning, it offered this unique opportunity to experiment with identity, to create different personas, explore different sides of yourself.
Right.
But Heaven's Gate, they were all about conformity, matching outfits, uniform haircuts. They even ditched their individual names.
Right, the whole hive mind thing, a complete erasure of individuality.
Exactly. But here's the twist. While they were rejecting multiplicity in the physical world, their online presence, it actually tells a different story.
Oh.
Yeah, their website, it wasn't just a static brochure, it was dynamic. They were engaging with people, participating in forums, even getting into heated debates online.
Wait, so they were using the internet to connect with others, even while they were preaching isolation and rejecting the physical world.
That's the paradox. They were drawn to the anonymity and the freedom of online interaction, even as they were trying to escape from it.
It's like they were playing a game, trying on different masks, but with these, like, deadly serious consequences.
And that raises all sorts of questions about the boundaries between our online and offline selves and how blurry those boundaries can get, especially for people who are searching for escape, searching for a sense of belonging.
Okay, so let's bring this back to Heaven's Gate. How did they go from this, like, quirky website to mass suicide? What was the tipping point?
Well, it wasn't one single thing. It was this whole perfect storm of factors, all amplified by their online echo chamber. Hale-Bopp the comet. That was a major catalyst for sure.
Right.
But it was their twisted interpretation of it, fueled by their apocalyptic beliefs and their detachment from reality that really sealed their fate.
You mentioned earlier that their website was ridiculed for its design. Like, how did they react to that? Did they try to, improve it, or did it just make them feel even more alienated?
It's interesting. They were definitely aware of the criticism, but they kind of saw it as proof that the world just didn't get them.
Yeah.
Their website, it was like an extension of their ideology, a reflection of their need for control, their rejection of mainstream values. They weren't interested in fitting in with internet culture. They wanted to create their own space, their own rules.
So, in a way, the criticism just made them double down on their beliefs.
Exactly. It validated their path, even though it was a path leading to self-destruction.
Man, that's heavy. It really makes you think about the internet as this double-edged sword.
It is.
I mean, it can connect us, inform us, empower us, but it can also isolate us, radicalize us, warp our perception of reality.
Absolutely.
Okay, this is getting pretty intense. Can we, like, lighten the mood a bit? Remember those cheesy 90s websites, all the flashing GIFs and MIDI music?
Totally. The dial-up modem sound still haunts my dreams.
And you know what? Heaven's Gate's website, as weird as it was at least a step above those GeoCities nightmares, right?
Ha! That's a good point. So
Okay.
maybe they weren't complete tech Luddites after all.
Right. So they were into technology, but they saw it through this very specific lens, warped by their beliefs and that desperate desire to escape.
Exactly. They were early adopters in a way, but they became victims of their own digital echo chamber.
It's a cautionary tale for sure.
Yeah.
But it also makes you wonder, could something like this, like Heaven's Gate, actually happen today? I mean, the internet is a whole different beast now.
That's a question that keeps a lot of researchers up at night. While a carbon copy of Heaven's Gate is unlikely, the ingredients for similar tragedies, they're still out there.
Really?
Oh yeah, we've got the same anxieties, the longing for escape, the vulnerability to those charismatic figures who promise easy answers. And let's not forget, the internet now has algorithms that can basically serve up a customized buffet of confirmation bias, feeding you exactly what you want to hear, no matter how out there it is.
So it's less about spaceships and comets these days, and more about getting sucked into these rabbit holes of misinformation and conspiracy theories.
Exactly. Think QAnon, anti-vax movements, even some of those fringe political groups. They all tap into those same basic needs, the need for belonging, for certainty, for a sense of control in a world that feels out of control.
And the internet is just the perfect breeding ground for that stuff.
It is. But it's not about living in fear. It's about being aware, being informed. The internet's a powerful tool, but like any tool, it can be used for good or evil. The key is developing those critical thinking skills, being able to sort fact from fiction, challenge our own biases, and seek out different perspectives.
So how do we do that? How do we cultivate that kind of digital literacy, not just for ourselves, but for future generations?
It starts with education. Teaching kids from a young age how to navigate the online world safely and responsibly. It's about fostering critical thinking skills, media literacy, a healthy skepticism of anything that sounds too good to be true, and creating online spaces that encourage thoughtful discussion and respectful debate, not echo chambers and flame wars.
Man, that sounds like a tall order. Almost like we need a digital detox as a society.
Well, a detox might not be realistic, but a shift in mindset is definitely necessary. We need to stop thinking of the internet as just entertainment or a means to an end. It's this vast, complex ecosystem that's shaping our culture, our politics, our way of life. And we need to engage with it consciously and critically if we want to, harness its good and mitigate its potential for harm.
So, in a way, the legacy of Heaven's Gate, it's not just a warning, it's a call to action.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that the choices we make online, the communities we join, the information we consume, it all has consequences. We have a responsibility to be informed, to be critical, to be discerning, not just for ourselves, but for the sake of a healthier and more resilient digital future.
Wow, that's quite a thought to, sit with. It's been a real journey from the bizarre details of the Heaven's Gate suicide to these bigger conversations about technology, belief, human nature. I feel like I've learned a lot, but I also have even more to think about.
And that's the whole point of a deep dive, right? Challenge those assumptions, broaden perspectives, leave you with more questions than answers.
Well, in that case, I'd say this deep dive has been a huge success. Thanks for taking me on this wild ride. And to our listeners, thanks for joining us as we journeyed into this digital abyss.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you've learned something new or at least piqued your curiosity. Remember, the internet's a powerful tool, but it's up to us to use it wisely. Stay curious, stay critical, stay connected, but always be wary of those rabbit holes.
Okay, so we've talked about like the good and the bad of the internet, right? But when it comes to Heaven's Gate specifically, do you really think something like that could happen again today? Like the online world is so different now.
It's a question that keeps a lot of researchers up at night, you know.
Yeah.
While a carbon copy of Heaven's Gate, probably not, but the ingredients are still there.
Really?
Yeah, you still got people searching for answers, feeling lost, wanting to escape,
Right.
and you've got those charismatic figures always ready to offer easy solutions, and then you've got the internet itself with algorithms that can feed you exactly what you want to believe no matter how crazy it is. So it's less about spaceships and comets now and more about getting sucked into those online rabbit holes.
Exactly. All those conspiracy theories, misinformation, it all preys on the same
Like
vulnerabilities.
QAnon, you're saying,
Yeah.
or those anti-vax groups.
Exactly. They all tap into that need to belong, to feel certain, to have control in a world that feels chaotic.
And the internet just makes it so easy to get lost in that stuff.
It does, but it's not about living in fear. It's about being aware, you know? The internet's a tool, and like any tool, it can be used in good ways and bad ways. The key is learning to think critically, separate fact from fiction.
So how do we do that? How do we teach people, especially young people, to be more digitally savvy?
Education is key, starting early, teaching kids how to navigate the online world safely, think critically, evaluate sources.
So media literacy, basically.
Exactly, and encouraging healthy skepticism. You know, if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Right, right. But it can't just be about teaching kids, right?
Yeah.
I mean, adults fall for this stuff too.
Oh, absolutely. We all need to be more mindful of what we're consuming online, who we're connecting with, what information we're spreading.
It's almost like we need a digital detox, as a society.
Well, a detox might be a bit extreme,
Yeah.
but a shift in mindset, that's crucial. We need to stop thinking of the internet as just entertainment or a way to kill time.
Yeah.
It's powerful, it shapes our culture, our politics, everything. We have to engage with it carefully, critically.
So Heaven's Gate, it's not just a cautionary tale, it's a call to action, right?
Exactly. It reminds us that the choices we make online, they matter. They have real-world consequences.
Powerful stuff. This whole deep dive, it's been a real trip, from the weird details of the Heaven's Gate story to these bigger questions about technology and belief in human nature. I feel like I've learned a lot, but I've also got a lot to think about.
That's what it's all about, right?
Yeah.
Challenging assumptions, expanding perspectives.
Well, on that note, I think we've done some serious digging today. And to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this journey into the digital abyss. We hope you learned something new, maybe even had your curiosity sparked a bit. Remember, the internet is a powerful tool, but it's up to us to use it wisely. Stay curious, stay critical, stay connected, but always, always be wary of those rabbit holes.